Well, first of all, I'm not a believer in global warming. I'm not a believer in man-made global warming.
Climate change is real. It is significantly caused by human activity.
Anything that we would do on that would have a real impact on our economy, but probably, if it's only us doing it, a very negligible impact on the environment.
I think this is driven by politicians that want more control over our lives.
Us that climate change is real and
These are the presidential candidates of 2016. They should be talking about climate change, and here's why. Climate change. Since 1880, this Earth has warmed up about 1.7 degrees due to human activity. 97% of all scientists agree that our Earth is globally warming up due to human activity. And this tiny change in temperature has been a catalyst for dramatic changes in our Earth's climate.
One of the things most people don't realize is that we're already feeling the effects of climate change now. It's not something that's going to happen in the distant future. We are already seeing record levels of drought, including here in the US, out in California, increased wildfires, sea levels are already starting to rise.
And if we continue to ignore climate change, the effects on humanity will be even more disastrous. According to the New York Times, the effects may destabilize governments, produce waves of refugees, precipitate the sixth mass extinction of plants and animals in Earth's history, and melt the polar ice caps, causing the seas to rise high enough to flood most of the world's coastal cities. It will cause irreversible damage to the world we live in. Currently, America is the largest contributor of CO2 emissions, right behind China. So as a country, we're directly responsible for the negative effects of climate change. Executive action makes a large difference in the emissions of greenhouse gases, because our president not only holds a strong influence over our main legislative body, Congress, but also holds a powerful voice in foreign affairs, namely the United Nations, which recognizes the urgency of climate change.
Share a sense of urgency about this challenge.
Well, we just saw in Paris the great power and influence of leadership from an American president. Something that happened before the leaders of the world came to Paris was that the president reached an agreement with China. China then put its own commitment on the table. Because the US and China had reached this agreement last November, when the nations of the world met in Paris, there was already a lot of momentum because the two biggest polluters had made very big commitments to reduce their emissions. And that was the leadership of the American president in action. One of the biggest things we've done as a nation is the president has put forward something called the Clean Power Plan, which uses his authority under the Clean Air Act to go after our single biggest source of carbon pollution, which is, again, coal-fired power plants.
What they are proposing is a 32% reduction in the emissions level in 2005 by 2030. Something like half the states have sued the administration to stop these regulations, okay? And Congress is making a lot of noise about trying to stop these regulations.
And many people are upset with plans like these because of the economically difficult situation it puts them in. Marco Rubio, one of our Republican presidential candidates, puts it like this.
Is that there has to be a cost-benefit analysis to every one of these principles that people are pushing on. And
according to Jack N. Gerard, the president and CEO of the American Petroleum Institute, currently says that the entire natural gas and oil industry supports 9.2 million US jobs, accounts for 7.7% of the US economy, and delivers $86 million per day in revenue to our government. It's projected to generate more than $2.5 trillion in tax revenues between 2012 and 2035. In addition, Obama's plan is going to have a very negligible impact on global CO2 emissions. An analysis done by the US Chamber of Commerce found that the proposal would address a mere 1.8% of global CO2 emissions. And the worst part is, we could have up to 442,000 jobs lost as a result. So when we go back to Marco Rubio's point about the cost-benefit analysis, there's a real issue here where we're putting America's economy and the people's jobs at risk when we're barely doing much to prevent climate change at all.
When it won't have any impact. So I think the answer to this problem is innovation, not regulation. But I must say it angers me when liberals say, I'm prepared for you to lose your job in the name of sending a signal to whom? China could care less. In fact, China is delighted that we are not spending any time or energy figuring out clean coal because they're going to go do it.
However, many urge that no matter how small the impact is on combating climate change, it's a necessary step.
But we're basically trying to point out, no, this is an issue. It's not only an issue in absolute terms, but if other countries see the U.S. not doing things, why should I do it? Why should I make any effort if the U.S. isn't serious about doing it? Because it's really important that we set an example to the rest of the world, especially given our relatively high per capita emissions.
So there are many factors in how the president should tackle climate change. It's not as simple as shutting down all the coal in America, nor pushing away any possibility of regulation either. Democratic candidates Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, and Martin O'Malley all are fighting against climate change.
I am 100% in favor of accelerating the development of solar, wind.
The mega droughts and the floods and the famines caused by climate change. It is time for a new National Security Act.
Taking action now is vital to combat a problem that is not only affecting us now, but will affect all of humanity in the future. Climate change is the most important issue our presidential candidates need to talk about during this campaign because, as the people of America, we must know which president is best suited to tackle climate change.
A president's hardest task is not to do what is right, but to know what is right.